Thank you everyone for joining for our special edition of the Advocacy Institute, Federal Advocacy in your community. We really want to do a session on what you can do at home. You don't always have to travel to Washington, D.C. to make a difference with your federal lawmakers and in federal legislation. There's actually a lot of things that you can do in your hometown, right at home, that can make a difference. And we thought running through the options and ways you can get involved differently might be an interesting session. So we really appreciate your joining. If you have any questions, feel free to put them in the Q&A box. We will address those as the webinar goes on or at the very end, but we will get to them. And with that, let me introduce myself. My name is Mark Fisher. I'm the Director of Advocacy Engagement, and I'm joined by Paul Melmeyer, who will introduce himself and kick us off. Paul, go ahead.
All right, well, thank you very much, Mark, and welcome everybody. I hope you all are having a very nice afternoon. As Mark said, I am Paul Melmeyer. I am MDA's Vice President of Public Policy and Advocacy, and we're really excited for you all joining us this afternoon as we talk about all of the different ways that you can make a difference in federal advocacy right from your home, or maybe right down the street, or maybe down in the town next door. But we're going to go through all of that here over the course of the next little while. So let's move on to the next slide. And we're going to be covering these topics for our hour together this afternoon. As you can see, we're going to start with what you can do right in front of your computer, and the very computer screen you're probably looking at right now, all the online advocacy opportunities in front of you that you can take advantage of today. You can take advantage of this right after we're done with this call, for that matter, which we'll be getting to here in a moment later on the agenda. And then we're also going to talk about how you can also get involved in getting to know your congressional representative, or your senators for that matter, and how the congressional calendar actually is very important and impactful in how you can actually get to know your senators or congressperson. We're going to go through all the advocacy opportunities that are in front of you. There are actually many federal opportunities wherever you happen to be right now, which may be surprising. You might think all the action happens in Washington, D.C., but actually a lot of the action happens in your community, and we're gonna get to all of that later in the agenda. And then we're going to talk about a few tips and tricks, some tricks of the trade, and trying to get to know your representative, your senators, and just making a difference in the ways that you're hoping to. And as Mark already said, we're taking questions and answers throughout the conversation this afternoon, but we'll also have a dedicated time at the end to answer any questions that you may have about getting involved in your local community. So let's move on to the next slide. We wanted to first talk about online opportunities that you have to get involved. And many of you may be familiar already with the opportunities that MDA offers for getting involved in emailing your representative and emailing your senators, contacting them about legislation that is important to the neuromuscular disease community. But we wanted to just give you not only just a little bit of a background for those who might not yet be familiar with this opportunity, but also tell you a little kind of what this all means and how it can be impactful. Because you might, if you're following us on Twitter or you get our emails, you might hear us all the time asking you to please email your representative, email your senators, ask them to support this bill, ask them to vote for that bill. But you know, once you actually send the email, you might not actually know what really happens in the back end. So we figured we'd start with what actually happens when you email your lawmaker. Is it really that impactful? Who's reading your emails, for that matter, at the other end of the other computer screen, I suppose. So I can actually speak just a bit from personal experience. I used to work in a senator's office, and I was the person on the other end of that computer screen reading all the letters, actually the physical letters that I think were perhaps more likely to be sent in then than they are now. I get the feeling a lot fewer physical letters are actually arriving at the Senate and the House these days, probably more emails than that. But nonetheless, either physical letters or emails that come into a senator's office or a representative's office. And while it is perhaps I or someone like me who is reading the letter for the very first time, from there it goes into a legislative correspondence purview, and it is they who then kind of collect and collate all of the different letters, all of the different emails, and all the different phone calls for that matter that are coming into the office. And then they from there present to those who are actually responsible for the legislation within that specific senator or representative's office what they're hearing. You know, how many people are writing about this bill? How many people are asking for the senator to co-sponsor a newborn screening, or asking for the representative to support accessible air travel? Now, those sound like they're just numbers, and sometimes they can be. But if the numbers are big enough, if they're impactful enough, or perhaps if the senator or representative is kind of right on the line of thinking, oh, I've been interested in that topic. I kind of want to maybe co-sponsor that piece of legislation, but I'm not really 100% sure if this is for me. If they hear from their constituents enough, even if it's just 10, 15, 20 letters or emails that come in the door, they might say, you know what, I'm hearing enough from my community that this actually is very important. For back in my district in Pennsylvania or Colorado or Wyoming, wherever they happen to be, I am going to co-sponsor this because while I might have been on the line before, I want to co-sponsor now or vote for this now because I heard enough from the community that this is important to them as well. Now, those are just kind of the numbers, but it really is even more impactful if you're able to make these letters personal, if you're able to make these emails personal, because again, if it's someone like me who's on the other end of the computer screen, going through all the letters that are coming into the senator's or representative's office, the ones that are personal stick out, and you actually flag those. You actually take those out of the pile in a sense and say, this isn't just, someone kind of clicking a button to send off to their representative, which again is still important, but someone really took the time to personalize the story, to talk about how they're impacted by not having indicated treatment for their disease. And that's why they're supporting the Act for ALS, for example, or they're impacted by not being able to find a well-paying job. And that's why they are contacting their senator to co-sponsor some of the disability employment legislation that the MDA is supportive of. When there's that personal story in there, it's pulled out of the pile, and it is reviewed even more carefully, and it is digested even more carefully because someone obviously took the time to really tell their story. And it's obviously very important for that individual to take a time out of their busy schedule to actually add their personal story to that letter. And some that are, include a story that's impactful, that is really meaningful, that really catches the eye of the individuals who are responsible for that legislation within the office. It's actually put on the senators or representatives' desk. Oftentimes the senators or representative, they have a dedicated time each week, sometimes each day, where they actually, have 5 to 10 letters that are placed on their desk in front of them to read before going to vote on the bill on the floor, or going to their committee hearing, or going to a fundraising, going wherever it is. They actually have dedicated time to read the 5 to 10 letters that their staff felt were the most impactful. And it's those letters that really, really, really can make a difference, because it's those that say, okay, if I'm the representative or senator, this letter obviously is very important to, this issue is obviously very important to Jennifer in Texas. I'm a congressional representative from Texas. I want to co-sponsor this because clearly this is important to her. She makes a very good argument. I want to do it. So again, just to kind of summarize, this is why it's so important to personalize these emails, these letters, these phone calls if you can, because again, that's really where they make such a big difference. Mark, I'm going to turn it back over to you.
Thanks, Paul. And just to add to that, as technology has improved, congressional offices are getting even more slick at figuring out which emails are personal, and they have software that can aid the staff to know which ones are personalized and which ones might not be. Again, the ones that are clicked that might be a form letter are still important, but they're even getting better at figuring out which ones are personalized. So I'll go through really quickly in a couple seconds how you can do that easily in our system. But also we want to talk about the Action Center as a way, as I'm going to say this a lot, as a one-stop shop place for you to get the information you need to complete some of the opportunities we're going to talk about in a couple minutes. On our website, you can see the latest bills that MDA supports. So you'll be able to see which bills that we have endorsed and learn a little bit more about them and give you key information to help if you have a meeting with a lawmaker, or maybe you're meeting them at a town hall. You also can look up information on your officials. And this is really important. So where is that district office? What's the district phone number? Who is the district manager or the district director? And what bills have they co-sponsored that MDA is also endorsed? You can find all that on our Action Center. And then our blog posts are also a resource for you. And we have just posted one about August recess, and we'll get to that in a second. So I wanted to quickly show you how to do some of these activities. So I'm going to get out of the PowerPoint real quick, which is always dangerous to do. But I'm going to show you a little bit of our homepage and how you can do some of these things. Paul, can you give me a thumbs up if the Action Center came on? Perfect. So the first thing I wanted to show you is just how to personalize a letter. So let's go into the campaign we have about accessible air travel. Many of you are familiar with this screen. It has your information here on the right that you plug in so we can match you to your right lawmaker. So this doesn't change. You make sure this information is right and then review your message. And there's actually 3 spots that you can personalize this message to your lawmaker. The first one, and if there's anything you do, it would be this: just customize the subject line. We give you an option here, we give you a template to use, but you can actually replace this and do anything you'd like. So maybe you just say, please make air travel more accessible. We do give you spell check in case you, like me, are not the best speller. It will make sure that you get it right. Now, if you send this to your lawmaker, that's going to stand out because that's going to differentiate your subject line from the other ones that are sending through our system. So if you only have a quick couple seconds, that's a great way to make sure that your message stands out. It's just changing that subject line. But you can go a step further if you like. We have a spot here where you can actually add a nice introduction that's customizable to you. So maybe you can say, I need to use a wheelchair and it's difficult to fly on an airplane. Now, obviously, it'll be much more eloquent than that, but you get the idea. You can do a nice introduction, takes a couple seconds to do, and you can extend this as much as you want to make it easier to type, because I know it's a little bit small. And then many people don't know this, but all of our form letters, so this is the template letter we give you, they're all editable. So you read this and maybe you might say, hey, maybe I could add up my personal story in between these 2 paragraphs. You can simply just edit our letter and easily add anything you'd like there as well. So we give you 3 opportunities to do that. It only takes a couple seconds, and I highly recommend that you might do that. Just as Paul mentioned, it will shoot your email up to the very top, and if anything, it just differentiates you from the other emails that are sent. Now, if you don't have the time, you just want to click send, that's totally great too, but if you do have those couple minutes, that will make your letter stand out even more. So let's go back to the Action Center and talk a little bit about the bills we support and where you can find that information on our site, which will help you as we get to the later activities in this presentation. So if you're at our main site, if you scroll down to the very bottom, there's this View Key Legislation link right here. If you click that, these are all the bills that MDA supports. They are broken up in some of on our subject line, our subject area. So our access to care bills, our empowerment and independence bills, and our accelerating therapeutic development bills. They're all listed here. Both the HR are the House bills and S are the Senate bills. So let's go into and find a little bit more information about the Air Carrier Access Amendment Act. So if we click on this one, you have a pop-up and it gives you everything you need to know about this bill. A little bit of information here about what it is. If there's a Senate companion bill, so we have one, that's a Senate bill, what that number is. And then it says that we do support this bill. It gives you a little bit of explanation about what the bill does. This is all very helpful if you have a phone call or a meeting with a member or go to a town hall. These are all quick things you can mention. Also, the co-sponsors of the bill that have co-sponsored, so you can find your representative. If they're not on this list, you can ask them to co-sponsor. If they are on this list, you can thank them for co-sponsoring. A little bit about where the bill is right now. We now see that it's been referred to a subcommittee. And then if you want even more, you can click on this link that brings you to a government website that can give you even more information. This is really just your one-stop, I'm gonna say one-stop shop of about all of our bills. So if you want to advocate on the Air Carrier Access Amendment Act, just click on it and this gives you more information than you need. Actually, a lot more information about what the bill is in an easy to digestible way. The second to last place I wanted to show you is, we'll go back to the main page, is to look up your representative. So let's say now you have a meeting, you want to look a little bit more about your representative, or you know your representative is going to be at a town hall. All you need to do is just type in your zip code. Now, a lot of congressional districts cross zip code lines, so they're going to ask you a little bit more about what your street address is. In the old and many years ago, you just needed a zip code, but the way they've done districts now, you probably need to put your full address in. Hit the little arrow. It'll bring up all your representatives. I'm gonna go to my representative right here. Again, a pop-up comes up and it gives me some key information. One is, obviously, if you're in DC, where is his house office building? But again, this is a webinar about what you can do at home. So this gives you the district address. So I know that Representative Raskin, his district address, his local office is on Monroe Street in Rockville. So, I know exactly where that is. I can easily stop by. This is also his district number. So if you need to call the office, you need to know what the district number is, simply go to our site, find your rep, and it's right here. Here is another thing that's important is the staff. This is his staff. So this is his district staff, which is really important. So if you meet a district staff or you have a meeting with a district staff and they say, oh, you're meeting with Kathleen Connor, oh, she's the district director. And that's some really helpful information for you to have. Or if you couldn't remember exactly who you might have met, you can go here and it'll jog your memory of who you've met. Then finally, this is my favorite part, is the bills. So this shows you which bills that MDA supports that Representative Raskin has co-sponsored, or who your rep has co-sponsored. So we see he's co-sponsored a newborn screening bill, which is great, which passed, by the way, thanks to many advocates on this call. It passed the House. Still waiting on the Senate, but it passed the House. He's also co-sponsored Act for ALS, but he hasn't co-sponsored our air travel bill, the Air Carrier Access Amendments Act. So you look at this, oh, maybe this is something I can go to him and ask him to co-sponsor because he hasn't done it yet. So very easy information. We'll review this at the end of the presentation, but this is really where you can go to find everything you need to have a successful in-district advocacy opportunity. The last thing I'll mention is our blog. We just posted one about August recess right here, about what you can do for August recess. This will be very familiar after you see the presentation, but we have a handy recess guide that will walk you through how to have a good in-person meeting or some of the other opportunities we're about to talk about. So this is your go-to document about what we've been talking about. A fact sheet about air travel, just a few other resources for you. So we want to just quickly talk about what's available right now to you on our website to help you out to do some of these opportunities we're going to talk about. So with that, Paul, I'll turn it back to you to talk a little about congressional recesses and all the times they're back at home.
All right, perfect. Thank you, Mark, and great overview on all of the different opportunities, all the different resources on MDA's website. I hope everyone does go and check that out. So you may have been wondering, at the very least, why are we talking about this topic today? Well, what is it about right now? What is it about August more generally that is motivating us to discuss advocacy in your community? Well, it's because it's August recess. If you have any familiarity with congressional calendars or congressional schedules, perhaps you watch the news and you heard this of late. Generally speaking, Congress, both the House and the Senate, try to take as much of August away from Washington, D.C. And this is a tradition. This is a remnant that has been true for a very long time. Maybe all the way back until a very long time ago, but at the least for as long as I've known Congress, they've always been taking an August recess. So the thing though about August recess, and it generally lasts oftentimes from the very beginning of August to the week after the week of Labor Day in September. Sometimes that can either be shortened. For example, this year it actually was shortened. The Senate worked until actually Tuesday, just 2 days ago, and there's some discussion about coming back even earlier potentially than Labor Day for members either on the House or the Senate side to vote on additional bills. But by and large, August is the largest recess time of the year when representatives and senators aren't in Washington, D.C. They're actually in their districts or they're in their states. They're wherever they happen to call home. But what's important to remember is August is actually not the only time in which Congress takes a recess. And you can see over on the right side of the slide here, all the other times in which Congress might be in recess. And this is just a sample. This isn't definitively exactly 2021 for that matter, but this is generally a schedule, a sample schedule of the way that the House and Senate works. And the House and Senate also operate differently. If the Senate is on recess, the House might be actually here in DC, or if the House is on recess, the Senate might be here in DC. So it can be confusing, it can be changing, it can be shifting, but by and large, the point here is that your representatives, your senators are actually in the district reasonably often. And it's oftentimes around holidays. It's timed around days in which there otherwise is a holiday. So let me give you an example. They take 2 weeks to be in the state around the July 4th holiday, generally the week before, the week after. They do the same around the Thanksgiving holiday. They take that week to be in their respective home districts. And, you can kind of go through the list here on the right side and find the different holidays that might be associated with these over on the right side. And then there are other times during the year in which, it's just they scheduled to be in the states or in their district. But what's very important to remember about this is that these aren't vacations. And oftentimes we hear, oh, if representatives or senators aren't in DC, they're not doing their job. They're off on vacation. They're taking time off from work. And sometimes actually, they are human beings. They might actually be taking a vacation every so often. But by and large, they're actually working every bit as hard as they were in DC, but they're working in the States. And they're doing a variety of things, some of which we're going to cover here in a moment. But they're actually just doing their work and trying to represent their constituents by working with their constituents, meeting with businesses, meeting with organizations, with nonprofits, with constituents. Just the list goes on what they happen to be doing in their home district or in their home state. They're working hard oftentimes. They are actually doing a lot of work in their district to try to better represent their constituents, but they're just not doing it in Washington, D.C. They happen to be doing it at home. But that is why there is such an opportunity in front of you. As they are home, they are in their district, they are in their state, wanting, desiring. That's the purpose for them to be there in that time, to meet with folks like you, to talk about your priorities, talk about what you would like them to do when they are back in Washington, D.C. But as you can see, we're not just talking about August right now for opportunities to actually interact with your representative or your senator or your representative and senator's staff. These opportunities exist throughout the year. So let's move on to the next slide. And I want to just talk a little bit about the importance of in-district advocacy and what the unique opportunity is in front of you to do in-district advocacy with your federal representatives or your federal senators that don't actually exist in Washington, D.C. You actually have an advantage of meeting with your in-district staff or meeting with your representative or senator in district compared to if you were to be here in Washington, D.C. So the first is that it's much easier to build relationships with the staff in your local offices. And that's because that is really kind of the core tenet of their job. Their job in the district is to build relationships with the community. And representatives generally have 1, 2, maybe 3 offices at the very most in their district. Senators will oftentimes have more. They'll try to have offices across the state that they represent, unless they are in a very small state. Maybe there's just 1 office for the senators of Rhode Island or Delaware. I don't know. There's probably actually 3 or 4, and I'm misstating their presence there. But regardless, there's going to be an office likely nearby that is staffed by staff members whose job it is to get to know you. They are there to get to know you and to get to know your priorities. And so this means that they're more accessible. They're going to be more accessible in the district office or in the state office than they may be the staff in Washington, D.C. Because those folks in Washington, D.C., while of course they are there to still get to know you, they're still there to represent you, their primary focus is legislation. Their primary focus is all the legislative work that happens in Washington, D.C., whereas in the district, their primary focus is serving you and getting to know you and representing constituents. So this means that district staff are more accessible by their very nature. They're going to have more opportunities to meet with you, to talk with you, have more time to talk with you oftentimes, because again, that is priority number 1 in their job. Now, that doesn't mean, though, that they don't have the same ability to impact legislation or to impact the work that's happening in Washington, D.C., because oftentimes the first place that the staff in Washington, D.C. go to better understand the viewpoints of their constituents, the viewpoints of, well, what do you think individuals in the district would think about this legislation or think about this opportunity or how we should vote on that? One of the first things they do is they call the district staff. They call up the staff that are down the street from you right now and say, what have you been hearing? Who have you been talking to? Give us the pulse on what is happening within the community. Because again, they're in Washington, D.C. They're not in Michigan. They're not in Oklahoma. They're not in Washington State. No, they're in Washington, D.C. They're going to call the folks who are actually in the community, who are meeting with folks like you every single day to try to figure out how the senator or representative should actually vote on a piece of legislation or how he or she should weigh in on a piece of legislation. So the district staff have a direct line to Washington, D.C., and they are some of the first people that are asked on what a senator or representative should do on any given piece of legislation. The district staff also have an opportunity to really learn your story. They can really get to know you because, again, they're your neighbors and you're their neighbors. And they, you can actually build a relationship there, not just around your story of how you're actually trying to impact a piece of legislation, or not just around how your representative or senator might be voting on a piece of legislation, but around the fact that you're neighbors with them and that, you know, you're part of their community and they're part of yours. And so they actually have a better opportunity to get to know you, not only just the parts that may be important or the stories that may be impactful for a piece of legislation, but everything else as well. You're going to see them in the grocery store. You're going to see them, you know, and at the Little League ball game, for that matter, if because they live 10 minutes down the street. So they have an opportunity to really get to know you and to learn your story. And then if they get to know you, if you're to come to DC, if you're to come to one of MDA's advocacy days here in Washington, D.C., or any other organization's advocacy day for that matter, or you're just in D.C. doing a tourist visit and you happen to want to stop by your representative's office, that's really going to help, because you now know the district staff. You can say, oh, yeah, you know, I saw Jackie last week. I saw Tim the other week. We talked about this and that. And of course, the folks here in Washington, D.C., that's only going to kind of grease the wheels even further for them to want to help you out, to actually respond yes to the ask that you're asking for the DC staff to actually do something. So it all helps the work here in Washington, DC, if you're able to get to know the folks in your district. So that's the staff, but of course, members of Congress are in their district a lot as well, as you saw in those recess calendars in the previous slide. They're oftentimes there to meet with you as well, and they're going to be more accessible when they're at home than when they're here in DC, because they don't have to worry about committee hearings, or they don't have to worry about voting on bills, or they don't have to worry about whatever responsibility they have here in Washington, DC. They're primarily worrying about, again, meeting with you. So they're going to be more accessible, and they're going to be even better able to digest your story when they're in your community and you're in their community, for that matter. So there's the opportunity to build a relationship with your senator and with your representative actually in the district by showing up. And we're going to talk about all those ways in which you can show up, but there's even a better opportunity right down the street to do so. And there are many options to be meeting with your members and staff as well. And for those options, Mark, I'm going to turn it back over to you.
Excellent. Thanks, Paul. So yeah, there are a lot of options out there. And you know, hopefully after this webinar, you might pick a couple that might interest you the most. But they're all valuable. And the first one we'll talk about is visiting the district office. So again, if you're not sure where the district office is, just go to our website, look up your lawmaker, and you can find it there. And there's just a lot of advantages to visiting the district office as opposed to traveling to DC. First, if you go to the district office, you'll just have more in-depth meetings if you have a meeting. You know, if anyone's been to DC, you know, if you get a meeting with a staff member, it might be 10 minutes, and that's all you might get. But if you go to the district office, they have more time to meet with you, so means more in-depth meetings. Also, you meet with more senior level staff, as you will then in DC. The people that are there, you'll just have more of a senior level, maybe the director or a director office or the director of the district office. Very key people that are there you can meet with, as opposed to DC. Sometimes, you know, it's kind of a crapshoot who you might get if you don't get the member. So that's another advantage. Also, these staff do not turn over as much as they do in Washington, D.C. So it's worth building the relationship with. So if you do build a relationship with a district director, odds are that person's going to be there for a while. And that's even better. It's more advantageous for you, as opposed to D.C. They have such quick staff turnover that the person you might build a relationship might be gone in a year and a half. That's not the case in the district. You have a better shot at meeting with the lawmaker. If you're able to look at the congressional calendar and say, hey, I know that there's the Columbus Day recess. Let me call up the office, you know, a month out and see if maybe I can get a meeting with my rep when he's in town or she's in town. You have a better chance than you would if you just come to DC and try to meet. So again, as Paul said, they're there to meet with you while they do their in-district work visits. If you're able to try to set up a meeting when you know they're in town, you have a better shot at meeting with them. Again, it's all about building that strong relationship with that district office, because as Paul said, they have that direct line to the DC office. A good example is if there is a hearing coming up on legislation or maybe a hearing on a topic, they'll call the district office, say, who do we know that has this case or has this certain story? You know, who do I know who has this experience that I could bring to DC for one of the hearings I'm chairing? Well, they're going to call the district office. They're going to say, who do we know? So if you had the relationship with the district office, you know, you might be someone they might select to participate in their hearing or meet with that member. So it's just very advantageous to get to know what that office is and visit. So how would you set up a visit to the district office? I think we talked about this. You just can go to our site and find that number and just give them a call and say, hey, I'm just up the street, or, I would love to stop by just to introduce myself to you and talk a little bit what I care about. They'd be more than happy to talk with you. They might even set up a nice formal meeting with you if they have time, but just pick up the phone and give them a call and see what they can do for you and start building that one-on-one relationship with the office. And this last point I think is really important. Virtual meetings are still an option. And I think they're going to be an option for quite a while. With COVID still not being done, I know many people might be not comfortable visiting a district office or going to an event. The good news is virtual options are still here and they're going to be here for quite a while. So you can call the district office and say, I'd love to have a virtual meeting with a staff member here, or maybe a virtual meeting with the lawmaker because I know they're going to be in town because it's the Thanksgiving recess. So that is still an option, and we highly recommend to take that if you want it. And you might have a better chance at meeting the lawmaker because they're liking this virtual world for their meetings. Another option is just to drop by the district office informally. If you don't have a meeting set up, you can still drop by. And that's a way to introduce yourself, of course, but also to get some materials in front of the office. Maybe you say, hey, I'm really interested in this employment discrimination law that I'm hoping that you would co-sponsor. Here's an information about it. Here's my business card. It'd be great to have an in-person meeting with either a member of staff here or the lawmaker, because I know they're going to be coming in town because it's going to be Thanksgiving soon. That's all you need to do, and it gets you in front of there, and you never know, they could get you a meeting. It could lead to an in-person meeting on the spot, and that has happened, where it's like, oh, thanks for coming. Why don't you step back in my office? Let's talk about it for 15 minutes. You never know. So just dropping by the office is a really good way if you don't have something formally set up. Again, it's about developing those relationships. This is a great one for social media because you could take a picture of yourself in front of the office and then tag the lawmaker saying, hey, drop by today. I saw you weren't there. Can I meet with you or staff? Or, hey, I dropped this information off at your office, Representative Harris. I'd love to have a meeting with you about it. And it just keeps that going. So this is a really good way to get that started. And then there's a few other events that we want to talk about. One is big in district are town halls. There's two options you can see on the right, but they are having town halls like crazy right now. And those are nice ways to get in front of your officials, ask a question. And then the good news is most likely their staff is there. So if you ask a question about supporting a bill, they might say, hey, I'd love to look into it. Please talk to my staff who are right there. And you can have that interaction with the staff member who has the ear of the congressman or congresswoman. Because of COVID, actually this has happened before COVID, but this is definitely now, is teletown halls. So instead of in-person event, many members are doing these online and virtually, which is great for you because you don't have to leave your home. You can just sign up and ask your question that way and get in front of the lawmaker and with your question or your concerns. Now, these two are my favorite because I used to work on a campaign for a current senator, but this is true no matter if they're running for election or not. They love parades and picnics. So think about some of the events that are going on in your district. Maybe it's a county fair, or that popular church parade or church picnic, or that church fair, or that fish fry, or the Labor Day parade. Anything like that, most likely they're going to be there. And as we get into next year, an election year, they're going to be there more and more and more because it's election year and they want to make sure they're in front of their voters. So those are some really good opportunities to get your face in front of them, have a couple, snap a photo with them or pull them aside and have a 5-minute chat about something. They're there to meet you and they're going to be there. So those are just some other events that we recognize. I want to at least plug that. Please get some questions in the Q&A box. I see a couple coming in already, so we're happy to take those at the end, but please keep those questions coming. So here are just some tips and tricks. I'm sure many are wondering, well, great, how do I know when there's a town hall or where my members going to be? Well, there's a few ways you can do it. First, I'd encourage people to sign up for the Lawmakers newsletter. They will make it known where they are when they're coming in district. They'll let you know, hey, I'm going to be back for 4th of July. I'm going to be at the Union City Parade. I'd love to see you there. Or, I have a town hall next Tuesday. Please here to sign up. So sign up for your lawmakers newsletter or follow them on social media. They want people there. They want people to attend. They want to meet you. They want to answer your questions. So they will advertise loud and clear where they are going to be. So that's a good way. Also, as a slide, this one showed you before, many times your local paper will tell you where they are. And they'll tell you where they might be. So follow some of your local news sources. That will help you as well. Also, if you develop that good relationship with them where you may have signed up or went to the district office a couple times or did a drop-by visit, they might reach out to you and say, hey, just so you know, the member of Congress is having a town hall. I know you've been to the office a few times. We'd love for you to join. So as you develop that relationship with them, they might reach out to you and ask you to attend these meetings. So a few more tips and tricks is make it personal. Paul mentioned this before in the email segment. I'll mention it again. The more you can tell your personal story, the more it's going to cut through the noise. They meet a lot of people. They read a lot of emails. The more you can tell your personal story, whether it's an email, on social, at a town hall, at a visit, the better. And that will make you cut through the noise, and they'll remember you. And they'll remember you when they go on the Hill or when they have a hearing or they're on the floor. So the more personal you can make it, the better. A way to do that is something that I like to say is show and tell. In-district opportunities are a great way to show and tell. So a couple examples. Maybe you're having a virtual meeting with the in-district staff. Well, it's virtual, so you're bringing them into your home. So maybe have some show and tell items. If you're advocating on maybe a bill to help lower healthcare costs, maybe you have a stack of healthcare bills that you could show them virtually. Hard to bring those to Washington, D.C., but easy to bring to an in-district visit or on a virtual visit. Maybe you have an example of a piece of equipment or a wheelchair that an airline might have damaged. Really hard to bring that to DC, but really easy to bring that into something virtually or just into an in-district visit. Or maybe you have the bill for a piece of equipment you need that might have been damaged. Again, really easy to bring while we're in district because we're already home, a little bit more difficult to bring to DC. So those are just some really good ways to make it personal, is to show and tell something. Always promote it on social. We have an example in the upper right-hand corner. Whether you visited a district office for a drop-by, you had an in-district visit, whether you're at a town hall, whether you're at a picnic or a parade, take a picture, tweet it out, and tag the congressman or congresswoman. They love that. It's a way for you to keep abreast of it's a way for you to keep yourself relevant to them. They'll constantly see you and they'll remember you and they'll keep that relationship going with you. So just promote like heck on social. It's just a good idea, and it'll keep you on top of their mind. Follow up, follow up, follow up. Make sure they don't if they say, yes, I will bring this fact sheet to the member of Congress. Well, maybe in a week you email them, say, hey, did you do that? Or they said, oh yeah, I'd love to see if I could set up a meeting with you and the member of Congress. A week later, hey, can we get that meeting? Keep following up. Or if you meet them at a parade and the member of Congress says, oh, let me ask my staff about this bill and see if I will co-sponsor it. Well, a week later, email and see if he looked at that. So there's just so many great ways to follow up to make sure that you remain on top of their mind. And the way to do that is doing some of these in-district events. Then finally, use our Action Center to you. It's a free tool. It's there for you to use for all the information you need, whether it's what bills we support, where the district office is, what's the staff member you're meeting with. That is your go-to resource for you to use. So please, please use it. It's there for you. Now, it is August. So if you're really ready to go and do something this August, we have an action that we would love for you to take. Again, we are advocating for the passage of the Air Carrier Access Amendments Act, or we can just call it the Air Travel Bill. That's how I like to say it. It is a bill that will make air travel easier for people who have a disability. It will strengthen enforcement of non-discrimination protections. It includes a private right of action for travelers with disabilities if they mess up a wheelchair or another one of equipment that you need. It ensures that aircraft are designed to accommodate passengers with disabilities, and it improves access to seating accommodations. This is a bill that we've we've endorsed for a while. A lot of other groups do as well, and we really need some more co-sponsors for it. So this would be a great thing to do during this August, or candidly, maybe in this fall, if you have an opportunity to urge your member of Congress to co-sponsor the ACAA. If you're able to go to an in-district visit or see someone at maybe the Labor Day picnic or Labor Day parade, is something you could ask them to do and co-sponsor this bill. It'd be great if you could help us with that. There are 4 resources that I point out that you could use to help us with. One, the Action Center. I know I'm oversaying it, but it really is for you to use. The second is our August Recess Guide, which I showed you earlier. It gives you a detailed step-by-step of what tips and tricks for you to help you if you do an in-district visit, or if you go to a drop-by visit or a virtual visit. Anything you'd like to do, it's a nice guide for you to help you. We have a fact sheet about this bill you can give to the member of Congress or their staff. And then in 2017, we actually did a survey of the neuromuscular community about air travel that showed it showed how difficult air travel can be. And that's usually been very popular to show the members of Congress. So that is for you to use if you want to help us this August. Anyone who's attended this webinar, I will email you tomorrow morning with these resources. So I'll email to everyone who joined this webinar with these resources so you have them, so you can use them this August, or candidly in the fall if you want to use them as well. And the last thing I'll say before we take questions, so get those questions ready, is I'm a resource for you. Paul's a resource for you. So if this interests you at all, and maybe you're just like, I've never done this before, I'm not sure how to do it, I know I have these resources, feel free to email us at advocacy@mdausa.org. It is a real email address. I check it multiple times a day. I respond to it multiple times a day. Please email us, and I'll be happy to help you with anything, whether it's getting started, or maybe you have a meeting, I'm not sure how a meeting should go, happy to walk you through that. I'm happy to have BOC meetings where I pretend to be the member of Congress or the staff. I'm happy to do any way to help you if you want to do some of these advocacy opportunities in district. So with that, that is all we had content-wise, and I do see, Paul, that we have a question. So let me, so that's a good question. So Cindy, thank you for that question. I love that question. How important is it to get a legislator co-sponsor a bill as opposed to just having a legislator vote in support of the bill? Paul, I might have you have that one first, because I think you have a good answer for this one.
Yeah, absolutely. And Cindy, it really is an excellent question. Both are very important. Obviously, actually voting for a bill is what counts in the end. It's votes that gets a bill out of the House of Representatives. It's votes that then get it out of the Senate, and then we get it to the president's desk. So obviously, it's very important for a representative or senator to vote in favor of a bill. But actually, co-sponsoring a bill is also incredibly important for a number of reasons. So as a representative or senator co-sponsors a bill, they are officially announcing their support for that legislation. They are signing their name, actually quite literally oftentimes signing their name onto the bill and saying, I, Senator so-and-so, or I, Representative so-and-so, endorse this legislation. And not only are they saying that, not only are they endorsing it, they're also, in a way, at the same time, calling for its passage. They are calling for it to actually pass out of the House of Representatives or pass out of the Senate. So what this tells those who actually, make the decisions in Congress, and I will call out kind of two types of leaders in Congress that are very important as they're looking at co-sponsorships. The first is the committees of jurisdiction, those who are actually responsible for legislation in healthcare, or legislation in transportation, or legislation in the Defense Department. There's a committee that's responsible for each of these policy areas. And as they are thinking, okay, well, what should we prioritize? We don't have endless amount of time, committee X, committee Y. We don't have an endless amount of time to do absolutely everything. We have to choose what we're going to prioritize. And to have co-sponsors on a piece of legislation, to have 100, 200, 300 co-sponsors in the House, or 30, 40, 50 in the Senate, that tells them, okay, well, our colleagues are saying this bill is very important. It's very important to our colleagues that this bill passes, or that this bill gets the attention, because we see this many co-sponsors onto it. So we're going to prioritize our committee time on this piece of legislation that has 50 co-sponsors rather than this piece of legislation that has 5. Now, it's not that perfectly straightforward, but it is one of the best ways of showing committees what is important and what they should be spending their time on. In addition to not only just the numbers, it's also very important that they see that it's bipartisan, or oftentimes it's very important that they see both Republicans and Democrats support this legislation, that it's not just a Democratic priority or Republican priority that the other side happens to very much disagree with. And as we know, that can oftentimes lead to bills not being successful. But if there's a piece of legislation that has wide support across the aisle from both Republicans and Democrats, is that much more likely to actually get the attention of a committee because they know this is bipartisan. This isn't controversial. Everyone agrees on this. This is a no-brainer. We can do good work in this committee by actually moving forward with this legislation. So that's the committees, but also the leaders of the House and the Senate also pay a very close attention to co-sponsorship numbers. We're talking about Nancy Pelosi and Kevin McCarthy over on the House side. We're talking about Chuck Schumer and Mitch McConnell over on the Senate side. They as well only want to prioritize the legislation that is widely supported across the House and across the Senate. How do they know it's widely supported? By the number of co-sponsors and the makeup of the co-sponsors as well. Again, it's never just that simple. As we know, politics get in the way of the most popular bills sometimes for any number of reasons. Yet, co-sponsorships are incredibly important. And it's co-sponsorships that get us to that vote, that second option for a representative or a senator to show their support for legislation. So that's why both are very important, but that's why we right now, especially with the Air Carrier Access Amendments Act, are prioritizing co-sponsorships because we need the legislation to get that attention so that eventually we can get to a vote. And then maybe a couple months down the road, we're going to be asking you again to contact your representative to ask them to vote yes, rather than just co-sponsor the legislation.
Thanks, Paul. We have a question from Crystal, which I will take, which is, do you have some tips on state advocacy? Do you have info on each state's bill? So I'll be really honest that we don't do a lot of state advocacy work. There's a few reasons. One is, we are a growing team, but it's Paul and I for now. So we don't do a lot of state advocacy work. The only one that we really do is on newborn screening. We have done some newborn screening work in the states. I have worked with advocates on state newborn screening initiatives. What I would say is the tips are pretty much the same in terms of this advocacy. You can still visit the state office and we can still request, you can still do in-district state meetings, you can still do town halls. They still do all of those. Anything a federal lawmaker does, a state lawmaker probably does as well. And they're even more accessible because, well, they're a state lawmaker. So the same tips, the same relationship building, the same ideas are identical. They're just with a different set of lawmakers. And this could be dangerous, but on our website, we actually give information on state lawmakers. So although we don't do state advocacy, we do still have information on your state lawmakers if that interests you. So let me give you an example. I'll just type in my address again. Again, since districts can cross lines, zip codes, you probably have to put in your information. But let me just show you. So here we have your federal officials, and now we have your state officials. So let me look up my state senator. So Senator Cheryl Kagan. Click on her. And we have a few things. We do have our capital address. It doesn't look like we have a district address, but we do have our district phone number. We have her district email, her state district email address. So we have some information about her that could help you start your state advocacy. We have some of her staff as well. They have much smaller staffs, as you can imagine, but we do have their state contact information. So if you're interested in doing the same type of thing in the state level, our Action Center can still help you get the information you need. Unfortunately, we just don't do a lot of state work unless it's newborn screening work. And if that interests you, again, please email me at advocacy@MDA-USA, and we can try to help out with that. So we have a couple questions about, again, in their hometown. Yeah, I mean, I think we have a question about influencing your mayor in your hometown if they're on a board. Well, if you're on the board in your hometown, you probably have even more connections. So again, I think some of the same do apply though. It's just trying to meet them and talk with them. If you can't get with them, get with their staff and start building those relationships. That's kind of the key of this, is just building those relationships with your members of Congress or local officials. The same things apply. Especially with local officials, if you build those relationships with local officials, guess what local officials want to become? State officials. And then they want to become federal officials. So if you're able to build those contacts and those relationships even on the state level, and they become federal officials, those relationships are even more important. So it's important to try to do that with all levels of government.
Mark, I'll add one point to that as well. I mean, as we're thinking about who not only state lawmakers, but federal lawmakers hold in esteem in their local communities, who they want to connect with, who they want to be friends with, who they want to be close with, it's local officials, it's mayors, it's council members, it's state representatives for that matter. So if you do happen to have a connection with the mayor or a state representative or with a council member, whomever it happens to be, that is a great way also to continue to build connections from there, because yeah, I can guarantee you that that mayor actually has the ear of not only their state legislators, but their congressional legislators as well the mayor, of obviously knowing the town or city very well, is going to have a reasonably direct line. I don't know if it's an actual direct line right to the senator or representative, but more direct line than non-elected officials do at the very least. So another good reason to get to know mayor, other local officials that are in the area, if again an idea, if not just for their own benefits of getting to know them, but of course there's also other positive externalities in federal legislative advocacy as well.
You have a question about accessing. I believe the question is probably how are you accessing the website I'm on. If you go to mda.org/advocacy, you can sign up. And then once you do that, you'll have access to everything I showed you. So just go to mda.org advocacy and then hit sign up, and then you'll get to see the screen I had. Again, totally free for use. Please use it. Any last questions that we have? We have a few more minutes, and they've been great questions. So I'll let the questions open for just a couple more seconds if anyone has any. All right, I'm not seeing anyone. That's fine. We're almost at time. I want to thank you for joining us. Again, any questions, email us at advocacy@mdausa.org, and we're happy to help out however we can. And with that, thank you. Enjoy August recess. Enjoy the rest of your summers, and we will see you soon. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.